तू करीम है, तू रहीम है, तेरी जात सबसे अजीम है। तू करीम है, तू रहीम है।
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. To all those gathered in Leicester for the Khoja Heritage Exhibition, greetings, salam and dua from Africa. To Mr. Barkat Walji and his team, members of the Bahlul Society, and to the President and members of the Leicester Jamaat, I wish to convey my congratulations and good wishes for taking this initiative of organizing this first ever Khoja Heritage Exhibition. A similar permanent exhibition is at the Mullah Askar Memorial Library and Research Center in Toronto. We may ask, why this exhibition? What is so significant about the Khoja community that you need to have a heritage exhibition for the Khoja community? The Holy Quran is very clear in this respect when it says, "In akramakum indallahi atqakum." Nearer to Allah is only one who is the most righteous and most virtuous. And the ayat of Quran goes on to say that we have created you out of a male and a female and divided you into nations and tribes that you may know each other, not that you may despise each other. Nearer to Allah is only one who is the most righteous and the most virtuous. In that spirit, it matters a little whether you are born as an Arab, as an Irani, as a Sayyid or a non-Sayyid, as a Khoja or a non-Khoja. It's immaterial. What matters is how righteous and virtuous you are in the sight of God to be worthy of His creation. Having said this, one may be inclined to ask, why this Khoja exhibition then? What for? What is so special about the Khoja community? Ladies and gentlemen, there is nothing special about the Khoja community except for one thing. At one stage in their history, they had put on their thinking caps. They took an introspective look at themselves. They tried to identify their shortcomings, their confusion, their misunderstandings over matters of their faith and practices. And where they found doubts and confusion, they reached out to the experts to seek guidance. Having received due guidance, they were prepared to reform themselves and change to be on the right path, to be worthy of the divine creation. That is how the Khoja Shia Nationally Muslim community came into being 150 years ago. At one stage in history, it is recorded that the emerging Khoja community in Africa was the least organized Asian community in Africa. A similar situation prevailed in India also. Against many odds, at much cost to themselves, they organized themselves, they structured themselves as a community, and they are what they are today, recognized and respected by many. The worldwide Khoja Shia Nationally community comprises of less than 150,000 men, women and children put together, dispersed in over 24 countries throughout the world. A unique feature of the Khoja community as such is that before their division, they operated as a united community. There were those who practiced the Satpanthi way, there were those who practiced the Ismaili way, there were those who practiced the Sunni way, and there were those operating the Shia way. They all operated under one umbrella, under one Jamaat Khana. The Satpanthi and the Ismaili could recite their Ginan, while the Sunni and the Shia could perform their Salat in the same Jamaat Khana with their hands either folded or open. The first division came about in 1862 when the first group emerged as the Sunni Khoja. A decade later, a second group emerged as the Shia Ithnashri Khoja, as they are known today. One thing is to be remembered, that for 400 years, while they were converted from ancestral Hinduism to Islam, there was no help forthcoming from them from any quarter, despite the fact that the Sultanate of Awadh, for which Lucknow is the capital, was a Shia dynasty. There was prominent Shia community in Hyderabad and in Lahore, but hardly anyone reached out to the community in Gujarat. It was due to the initiative of members of the community themselves who, during their visit to Iraq for ziyarat to the shrine of Imam Hussein and Imam Ali, that they sought elucidation and clarification regarding matters of their belief and practices. And having understood and accepted their own shortcomings, they reformed themselves to be what they are today. The question facing us today is, as from 1960, the community members, like many other communities, started moving from Africa and from the Indian subcontinent to settle in the West, they were confronted with similar problems as they went through a century earlier. There was no help forthcoming from any quarter for them as they tried to settle in the West, in the United States in different locations, in Canada in different locations, in Europe, starting from Scandinavia, Germany, Holland, France, Belgium, and Portugal, and then to Britain. They were on their own, a minuscule community trying to find its way through unknown places. Drawing from their background experience in Africa and India, they formed community structures, the Khoja Shia Ithnashri community, that are today linked worldwide, from Australia, New Zealand, to San Francisco and Los Angeles. Any number of Khoja members settled there are linked with each other as a result of the community structures put in place. The question we are faced now, in fact the greatest challenge, is, do we wish to live in the West as foreigners, trying to replicate our old ways of life, our traditions and customs as the only way forward? Or do we wish to live in the West and ensure that our progeny integrate and assimilate with the local societies while fully upholding the Islamic belief and practices in their day-to-day lives? That is the real challenge. To achieve this objective, the structured setup of the community has played a crucial role so far. It has to be further strengthened. Communities and societies that fail to draw lessons from their past history and refuse to take introspective look at themselves and are not willing to adapt to the changing times and challenges at hand run the risk of disintegration. Here is the real challenge that we all, regardless of what faith you are following, are faced with. I am glad to observe that the community settled in the West is proactive. There are interfaith and intrafaith activities going on in Britain, which is commendable. Today, at this exhibition forum, I think our first duty is to reach out to our immediate cousins, the Khojas among the Ismaili and the Sunni, with whom we have blood relations. We can all go our own ways, but we can still remain as brothers. By the same token, we have to reach out to other Muslim communities of different denomination and racial origin. On top of that, we have to reach out to the indigenous local communities of Christians and Jews. In Africa, we had a motto, Ek bano, nek bano. Be united, be one, and be righteous and virtuous. With love for all and malice for none, we have to reach out to help develop a happy and healthy society wherever we are domiciled. Thank you very much for affording me this opportunity, and I wish you every success in your endeavors. Thank you.
The Holy Household for every household.
The Khoja Shia Ithna Ashari Muslim community, with a population of around 100,000, span most parts of the world, with mosques, Islamic centers, schools and hospitals all under the umbrella of the World Federation, a non-governmental organization with a special consultative status with the Economic and Social Council of the United Nations. Originating from Gujarat in the northwest coastal region of India, the community began when they converted from Hinduism to Ismailism and then to the school of the Ahlul Bayt. Ahlul Bayt TV takes you to the Leicester City Jamaat, where the Khoja community marked the first ever Heritage Day, tracing their roots back some 300 years.
Respected guests, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum. I would like to welcome you to this first ever Heritage Day here in UK. Today is all about our origins. It is the history of the Khoja Shia Ithna Ashari community. When I started researching on this subject, I was fascinated, not only on the struggles and the sacrifices and the trials and tribulations that our forefathers had to endure, but also on their initial theological doctrine. And when I've spoken about this here in Leicester in my presentations, there has been much intrigue and inquiry and some surprise. And that is because we simply are not taught our history in our schools. I've had to read many books for this exhibition, especially the ones written by my friend, Hassan Uncle Jafar, who is an authority on this subject. What is striking about him is his generosity and his willingness to assist and share his lifetime's work. May Allah give him a long life.
I'm really grateful for having been invited World Federation to speak on this unique event that's the first time that's being held. Like Barkat mentioned, Khoja's history has gone through a journey which is truly revealing. As you can see, it has been a tumultuous one, from Hindu heritage to an integrated faith called Satpanth, which happens to be a combination of Sufi and Hindu belief, then to Nizari Ismailis path, and eventually to the Jafri Madhab. We owe a debt of gratitude to Mullah Qadir Hussain Karbalai, who opened up the first madrasa in Mumbai in 1862. However, it was a journey taken by Devji Jamal to Karbala and convincing the then Marja Ayatollah Mazandarani, who sent Mullah Qadir to Mumbai, that the real conversion started taking place. It is at this time that there was a tremendous pressure from the main Khoja body. And as Barkat Bhai has mentioned, there were trials, tribulations, there were assassination attempts, all kinds of things were being done to stop this budding Jafri Madhab. Yet our forefathers secretly and bravely continued meeting for the Salat, for their majalis, and for the Messiah. Social boycott was done. Economic boycott was done. 4 of our brothers were killed. And opposition to building mosques from the main Khoja body stopped us from winning anything. However, as we see, our forefathers had the vision, and some of them decided to leave India and head towards the African coast. And the first port they went to was Zanzibar. and the coastal towns of Tanganyika and Kenya. There again, we had Mullah Muhammad Jafar Sharif Devji, who was the grandson of Jamal Devji, who started preaching, and he started writing books and going from place to place to start reciting majalis and bring awareness. Also at the same time in India, we had Haji Naji, who braved going to the villages, started writing books, preaching, and making sure that the budding community that's coming up is made aware of what's going on. And the first publication of Rahe-Najat started, and it's still going on. The success that happened in Zanzibar and elsewhere galvanized the community elsewhere, and they started building Jamaats. Again, it was the visionary Abdul Hussain Sachedina who saw that our communities were floundering in different places in Africa, which was totally inhospitable. So what he decided and what he suggested was to bring the idea of centralization. And that policy took place in 1946 when the first East African Federation was formed. Barkat Bhai mentioned about Hassan Bhai Jafar, and in his Endangered Species is a very interesting quote that he says, when you have one Khoja, you have a lonely, subdued individual. When there are two Khoja families, you have a Jamaat. And when there are three Khoja families, there's a federation and merry-go-round of the meetings. Our stay in Africa, as you realize, once the independence came in, people felt that this was not the place they wanted to live. So we had started a migration for that one, the Uganda expulsion, the Somalia revolution. All of that made our people leave the African coast and head towards UK and North America. Again, repeating the same thing again, our communities were spread out all over the place. And the idea or the concept of World Federation was put together. And of course, our first leader was Mullah Saad. At this stage, can I ask you to recite Surah Fatiha for Mullah Saad and the blast of the presidents, Haider Bhai Haji, who passed away recently, and all the marhumin. This concept of the Khoja history, the World Federation has taken one step further. And working together with the regions, we have started producing a movie, a title, A Khoja, A Journey of Faith. About 100 hours of footage has already been completed at various places in India. And last month, the previous president, Hussein Bhai Walji, was in Africa to capture the history of the Khoja Shias in Africa. His team covered Zanzibar, Lamu, Bagamoyo, Mombasa, Dar es Salaam, and all the other places. We hope and we appreciate the work that he has done, and we are hoping that the production will be ready by the time the conference comes in for World Federation in May 2014. Our forefathers and our fathers faced challenges of their times and managed to keep Khojas united and undertake tremendous progress for the community. We here, living in North America and UK, face different kinds of challenges. We've got the challenge of Islamophobia, where our religion is under scrutiny. Our practices are considered as alien, and we are under attack from the media and from everywhere. We are the ones who are living here, and our children are born here. So we feel that this is our place we want to be, and we need to go out and defend Islam. And some of the ways that we can think of is we need to open up our doors. Open up our doors to the media, to the local government, to all the officials that are out to the neighbors, and let them come and see who we are. Islam is not a religion of terrorism. Islam is not what is being portrayed outside. And it is our duty, especially at this critical juncture when Islam is under attack, that we now need to stand up like our forefathers did against this Khoja, Ismaili community. So it's imperative that each and every place where there are Jamaats of ours are there, that information is being leaked out, media is being briefed into what's going on, and every occasion that we get, I think we should invite them in here and let them see what we are. Another event, and which is also very critical, is the idea of sectarianism. We used to think that this is only confined to Iraq and to Pakistan. But what happened in Edgware Road last year brought home that sectarianism is rife here. In fact, they say that in England, especially England, it is something that is on increase, and we are going to be facing more and more problems. we are also aware of some of the Maulanas who have been under attack for speaking up against this sectarianism. So it is now again our duty to go out and start making amends or raising our hands, talking to the Ahl Sunnah. Majority of the Ahl Sunnah people that when you come across are against this takfiris, this extremism. They themselves are also worried as to the doctrine of Al-Qaeda. In fact, in Pakistan recently, this was the first time it has happened, is both the Shias and the Sunnis got together and celebrated the wiladat of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This has never happened, but because they saw the destructive ideology of Al-Qaeda and the Takfiris, they had no choice. So it is important for us now that in order not to give too much force to this Takfiris and the Wahhabism, we now have to get together with the other sects of the Muslims and try and work together with them.
Number one, here we talk about Islam introduced in India. But before Islam came to India, others also came. The Greeks came, and the Persians had come as well. So when they came, they normally came from northwest. They came, they introduced their culture, and that culture got immersed and dissolved into the subcontinent culture as well. Islam was different. You see, when Islam came, it came in two ways. First, it came as armies. When it came as armies, the first army was the Umayyads. Then you had the Turks. Then you had the Mughals. And then you had the Afghan warlords as well. When they came, they introduced Islam. Islam showed its real flexibility in that people who got converted were upright Muslims, and yet they held on to their heritage and their culture as well. Islam came also through missionaries and peers and dais as well. Islam came, it was unique because it had its own administrative system, it had its own Sharia, it had its own culture as well. Let's go through slide 2. Islam, I said that it came to India through peers and dais and missionaries. One of the dais, that is a very famous dai, his name is Pir Sadruddin al-Husayni. He came from Khorasan in Iran. He was instructed to come by the Ismaili Imam number 30. You see, today, the Ismaili Imam is number 49. His name is His Royal Highness Prince Karim Aga Khan number 4. In those days, 15th century, there was the Ismaili Imam number 30. His instructions to Pir Sadruddin was to go to the subcontinent and convert those people to Ismailis. Pir Sadruddin went to India. He went to 2 or 3 places. He went to Kashmir and he went to Punjab, and therefore if you go to those places, you will see Khojas who are Punjabis, and you'll see Khojas who are Kashmiris as well. But the community that we are really interested in is the Luana community in Sindh, Gujarat, Kathiawar. When Pir Sadruddin went there, he dissolved and he immersed into the Luana community. He got their confidence. He realized that these Luana communities, they believed in 3 gods, of which the 3rd one was Lord Vishnu. Now, Lord Vishnu came in incarnations. And you see some of the incarnations here. He came as a fish, he came here as a tortoise, he came as Rama, he came as Krishna, he came as Buddha. They were waiting for the 10th incarnation. So what Pir Sadruddin did was something you could call it brilliant, innovation, whatever you want to call it. Because he had their confidence, he said that you don't need to wait for the 10th incarnation. The 10th incarnation has already been born in the Middle East. His name is Hazrat Ali alayhi salam. And his light has gone through the Imams, through Hazrat Ismail, all the way to the 30th Ismaili Imam. Those people who accepted this are our forefathers. What he did was that he wrote Ginans. Ginans are mystical hymns. And the famous one he wrote is the Das Avatar, the 10th incarnation. He gave these people who converted a new religion. It was a hybrid form of Islam, not Hinduism, something in between called Satpanth, Sirat al-Mustaqim, the straight path. He assembled these people and he wrote some of these ginans in what is called Khoj ki script, which is a Sindhi script. And then he gave them a title. He said, look, you people, you are my people now. You are my converts. You are my honorable people. You are my Khoja. And in time, that Khoja got corrupted as we normally corrupt things to Khoja. Okay. Okay. Now, if I take you to slide 3, history is pretty silent from the times of the early peers, Sadruddin and a few peers later, up to 1800, early 19th century. And in those days, because the Ismaili community were persecuted, they would live in concealment, what is called taqiyya. And they had a bit of a mishmash religion. So for example, if they lived in a Shiite community, they would pray like the Shias. If they lived in a Sunni community, they would pray like the Sunnis. It was pretty much mishmash. People did whatever they wanted. There was no standardization there in those days. But then things changed. Things changed in the time of Aga Khan #1, Hassan Ali Shah. What he did, he's sometimes called, Hassan Ali Shah, the migrant in the politest form. He was based, like most imams were based, in Persia. He had an issue with Fatih Ali Shah, the Ithnashari monarch. There were some problems. In the end, he had to leave to go to Afghanistan. When he, Imam number? Aga Khan #1. Yeah, so that would be 46. Okay? So he had some difficulties. He had to go to Afghanistan, where he joined the British. After the British had to leave Afghanistan because they were fighting the Russians, they were expelled. He joined the British. He went to Karachi. From Karachi, he went to Bombay. That route, from Karachi to Bombay, he met many settlements which were Khoja Ismailis. He met his Khojas. And if you read their history, there is a book, his biography is called Ibrat Afza, where it shows clearly that when he went to the settlements, he spent the month of Muharram there. He did Taziyadari of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. He attended the mourning ceremonies of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. So in those days, the Ismaili community would, like us, read the Quran, would actually perform all the sessions that we do, the wiladats, the martyrdom of Imam Hussein alayhi salam in those days. That's what they used to do. And the Aga Khan one also did the same thing. But when he settled in Bombay, because his movements are really from Iran to Afghanistan to Karachi, Karachi to Bombay, Bombay to Calcutta, Calcutta back to Bombay. Every time he wanted to go back to Iran, he was not allowed to go back. So he had no choice but to settle there. When he settled there, he stamped his authority on his Khojas, on his community. He wanted to take control of the way things are working. Quite naturally, as an imam, he wanted to take control. But some people, they did not accept. In fact, they say that there are 12 people who objected. A man called Habib Ibrahim. He was a very rich man, merchant. He could pay the taxes tenfold over. Ismaili community pay what is called descend, 10% tax. He refused to pay. He said, I do not recognize Aga Khan #1, and he is considered to be a peer, but I do not accept the fact that all the properties and all the programs should be controlled by him. These people stopped paying the taxes. That led to the 1866 Khoja case. If you do Google, just do Khoja case. It's sometimes called the Aga Khan case. Sometimes it is called the famous 1866 Khoja case. The question was, what these people were saying was that we are Sunnis. We are Khojas and we are Sunnis. Look, we are praying Sunni style. Our marriage ceremonies, Sunni Molana. Our death ceremonies, Sunni. Everything is Sunni. We are Sunnis. In fact, Pir Sadruddin, the one who converted, is a Sunni. And therefore, we do not recognize His Royal Highness Aga Khan #1 Hassan Ali Shah. So the famous court case took place, and it lasted for a month or so. Eventually, the verdict was against these people, and the verdict was with Hassan Ali Shah Aga Khan #1, 1866. 1866. And the properties and their son and the programs, Aga Khan took charge. These people left. They claimed they were Sunnis. They opened, as it's here. You can see this. This is a Khoja Sunni Masjid entrance. So they became Sunni. So if you go to Bombay, you will see the Khoja Sunni community. Okay?
Is what we call Bamans?
No. They are Khojas. They were from Luana community. They became Satpantis. Then they became Ismailis. And these people, when Aga Khan came to India and stamped his authority, they said, no, we do not accept. The court case took place. They lost. They said, look, we are Sunnis. We'll open a Sunni Jamaat Khana. They opened their own burial ground, and they went separate. And pretty much they were excommunicated as well. Okay? Should we go to slide 4? Now, this is very interesting. This is where our history starts. Because after the Khoja case, you can imagine, right, that you've got a community bitterly divided. It was so divided that some few people decided to go for ziyarat in those days. When they went to ziyarat, they said there were 4 people led by a man called Devji Bhai Jamal. Now, Devji Bhai Jamal is the great-great-grandfather of Mullah Sahib. When they went there, they met the Mujtahid, Ishnashiri Mujtahid of the time, Sheikh Zainul Abidin Mazandarani. And the story goes that, look, he must have looked at these people, they must have looked at him, and he must have realized that these people look confused, and they must have been confused because of all the problems in Bombay. So it is said that the Sheikh asked these people that, have you been to Hajj? To which these people said, no, according to our Aqidah, our school of thought, ziyarat takes precedence over Hajj. So the Sheikh set them down and he said, look, this is the Shia Ithnashri Mazhab. And it is said that they were converted on the spot. So these people said, look, can you send me a teacher? So the Sheikh said, definitely we'll send you a teacher. And that teacher is Mullah Qadir Hussain, sometimes called Naif, sometimes called Karbalai. The Mullah did not want to go. He didn't want to be with the Khojas. He said, look, I've come here to study. I don't want to go there. I've come here for my studies. So the Sheikh said, no, look, this is jihad. You have to go. You have to go to Bombay, and you have to teach these people. Mullah said, can we do istikhara? Sheikh said, in this case, there is no istikhara. This is rational. This is jihad. I am telling you to go. He went. He went there. He faced a lot of difficulties. He went through a torrid time, but he persevered. He was supposed to go for a short period of time. He went there for 30 years. In that time, you need to read his biography to realize what turbulence that he went through. But eventually, he succeeded. And in 1901, the Khoja Shia Ithnashri community was born there, after which he went back to Karbala. He died at the age of 60 in 1902, and he is buried in the courtyard of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. So if you go for ziyarat, remember him. Without him, okay, let's move on. Okay, this is slide 5, crossing the ocean. Okay, our community from India, because of famine, because of wanting for a better life, because of illnesses and so on, our community migrated. So they went from the ports of 2 ports, Mandvi and Porbandar. And they went from there to Zanzibar. And that journey took almost 40-45 days, depending on the time of the year and the winds and so on, right? The sultanates in those days encouraged Indian migration because they were looking for people to do administration work, some clerical work. So they were encouraging Indian migration. So the Indians went from Gujarat to Zanzibar, and from Zanzibar they went to Lamu, Mombasa, Bagamoyo, Kilwa, and so on. So at the early times, when they went from India to Africa, due to some navigational problems, they ended up in Madagascar and Mauritius, right? And when they embarked on this journey, you had all kinds of Indians. You had the Ismaili community, you had the Ithnashri community. Now, in those days, things were very tense. So they used to call each other kafir and not eat each other's food. And then you had the Shia, Sunni, then you had the Hindus, the Brahmins, the Churas, and the Harijans, and so on. So when they started on this journey, they all kept to their own demarcation lines. But this was a very hazardous journey. Many people died. And throughout, as they went through the journey, they needed each other's help. People died. They wanted comfort. They wanted solace. They found solace on people they would never even touch. By the time they reached there, they'd become all brothers and sisters. And that demarcation lines of Hindu and Muslim and Shia and Sunni and Satpantis and all this went away. And this experience is what makes the Asians of East Africa community unique. Because this ethos of working together in harmony, being together, it's because of this experience. Okay? If you go to the next slide.
What are these photographs?
This is the port of Mombasa. This is the Masjid of Lamu, because we had the doors and the sail ships used to go to Lamu later on as well. And our community, beautiful mosque, if you've ever been there, absolutely magnificent mosque. We used to have a community of nearly 500 people. Today we don't have a community. And this is the early settlement pictures. Okay? If I take you to this slide here, has anybody been to Zanzibar? Yeah. If you've been to Zanzibar, you will know that it is one of the most interesting, most exotic places on earth. It's a beautiful place. It's a melting point of different cultures. You see, the Zanzibar was ruled by the Portuguese, and after the Portuguese, it was ruled by the sultanates, and after the sultanates, it became a British protectorate. The Arabs came, introduced Shafi school of thought, Islam. They introduced cloves and coconuts. They introduced a language called Swahili, from the Arabic word Sawahil, which means coastal. They introduced a new race, Afro-Arabs. Zanzibar boasts the shortest war in the world, 38 minutes. It is also the place where the first ever Southern Hemisphere masjid was built. It is also the place where the first ever Khoja Shia Ishnashi masjid was built. In the Kiponda area, called the Might of Allah Quwwatul Islam, and 10 years later, another masjid was built called Hujjatul Islam. And Zanzibar at its peak had a population of 3,500. A third of the Khoja Shia Ismailis converted to Ishnashiris in Zanzibar. Both masjids were very rich. The Nai Masjid, as it is called, had almost 100 houses. And there were very many notable figures. One, I will give you an example, is called Ali Nathu. Ali Nathu sometimes was called Ali Manoti. Ali Manoti means Ali with currency. It is rumored that the British, because he was a philanthropist, did a lot of charity work, that the British offered him a knighthood. He refused, but he said, look, I want two things. I want two public holidays, 10th of Muharram and 21st of Ramadan. The British granted him two holidays, and those two holidays were there for 44 years, from 1920 to 1964. Zanzibar's community were Shafi Muslims. The ruler sultanates were Ibadis. Two recognized holidays were Shiites. Okay? Next one. Once the establishment of the masjids took place in Zanzibar, we had the establishment of the masjids in Karachi and in Bombay as well. Bombay really should have been the first masjid, but because of legal actions taken by our brothers in those days, because things were tense in those days, it was delayed by almost 10 years or so. But they persevered. Bombay was formed in 1901, after which Karachi was formed. In fact, that was formed before 1892. Karachi has a Khoja community of 40,000 Khoja heads, Khoja Ishnashi heads, of which the greatest son of the Khoja community was born, none other than Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Like Zanzibar, Bombay and Karachi faced difficulties, persecutions, and excommunication, but with one difference. Here there were assassinations took place. So in Bombay and Karachi also, those who wanted to move away from the Ismaili school of thought, there were assassinations. But these guys persevered, and today we have Khoja Shia Ethnashi communities in Gujarat, Karachi, and Kutch as well. Let's go to slide number 8. Here you see we were all Satpantis, then we became Ismailis. And I just thought it may interest you to know about the Ismaili, the Fatimite dynasty. You see, the Fatimite dynasty is named after Bibi Fatima al-Zahra. They say, historians write, that of the 1,000 years of Muslim rule, 200 belong to the Shias. Actually, it belongs to the Shia Ismailis, because they formed a dynasty called the Fatimid dynasty. And they formed the capital of that dynasty called Al-Qahira or Cairo in 969. They formed one of the first modern mosque universities also, and that was built in 975, called Al-Azhar University, again named after Bibi Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam. We as Shia Ithnashi Muslims, we have 5 pillars, right? They have, Ismaili community has 7 pillars. And in that time, when they were rulers, they canonized and crystallized their school of thought of 7 pillars. They went through many divisions. Notables are the Druze. You see the Druze in Lebanon, in Palestine. After the 16th Imam, a man called Darazi split from the Ismaili community, and he formed the Druze faith. After Al-Hakim, and after the 18th Imam, Al-Mustanzir, there were 2 sons. One was Nizar, the elder one. The younger one was Musta'ali. Those who are Bohra community, Nuddin Bhai, you are here. You are the Musta'alis. And the Ismaili brothers here, they are the Nizaris. The Nizaris rebelled against the Musta'alis. They went to Alamut, which is below the Caspian Sea in the northern mountainous areas of North Iran. Okay. This one, slide 9, is, I've just given you some pictures on the Aga Khan. Notice, this is Aga Khan number 1, Hassan Ali Shah. This is Aga Khan number 2, Ali Shah. Notice the change in dress code. Then we have Sir Sultan Muhammad Shah, Aga Khan number 3. Then we have Prince Shah Karim Al Husseini, Aga Khan number 4. You see, in the times of Sir Sultan Muhammad Sultan Shah, major reformation took place in the Ismaili community. You see, in those times, the faith was a bit of a mishmash. He decided he wanted to standardize it. So away went, as you can see, the dress code changed, the beards went, the ladies' hijabs went, the ziyarat of Imam Hussein, the commemoration of Imam Hussein alayhi salam also was stopped. The way we believe Sharia, Taharat, Najasat was also changed. Visiting the shrines was stopped. Hajj precedence was diluted. Namaz, the way we pray, was changed. The ginans also were changed. The insertion of mentioning all the imams at the end of the ginans was introduced. And he made it very clear. He said, look, those people who want to go their way, it's up to them, I respect them, but this is the way it is. And a few people decided, Khojas who decided to go their way, they could not handle the real change. This was dramatic change. And they became Ishnashiris. And like I said, in Zanzibar, a third of the Ismaili community who could not take this change became Ishnashiri, because they were used to commemorating Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and suddenly through streams of Farman to then go the other way, it was too much for them. Okay. Slide number 10 is about expulsions, revolutions, and civil war. In 1964, we had the revolution in Zanzibar. Zanzibar was considered to be the safest place. In fact, they used to say that, look, if there's ever going to be a revolution in East Africa, we will all go to Zanzibar. It was considered to be the safest place. In 1964, there was a revolution. Thousands were killed. Forced marriages took place. 5,000 Arabs were killed. In our own community, 4 people were martyred. Most of our community left. Properties were looted. Most of them left for Dar es Salaam, and then from Dar es Salaam they decided to go to India, Pakistan, or Europe and America. You see, in 1972, Idi Amin, he had a dream from Allah to expel the Asians and to give them 50 pounds and to expel them within 90 days or so. The Khoja community in those days our community was 3,500. They left their properties, they left everything, they just came with 50 pounds in a suitcase. They had to go, they had to start again, start all the masjids, Imam Badgahs and so on. They had to leave, they started with nothing. But we have this culture of when you knock down, you go up, you rise, you educate and so on. And today you see the success of the Ugandan Asians as well. You see, in 1990, you had the Somalian civil war. 1,200 of our community had to leave. The Africa Federation had airborne and sea rescue missions, all of them paid by our own community members. That's slide number 10. Hassan Jaffer talks about migration maps. He talks about 6 stages. But if you just notice here, our migration was southeast and northwest was the first migration. Then we had the minor migrations, where communities from these parts of India went to Burma via Sri Lanka, went to Oman, went to Yemen. And in the 19th and the 20th century, our communities went on to the greater migration from these ports all the way to Zanzibar, from Zanzibar into the interior, because you had the British were building rail links from Mombasa to Nairobi. So people settled in Nairobi, from there Kampala, Arusha, Moshi, and all the different places as well. So they landed, and then later on they went interior. And then you had the revolutions, in which they had to move to India, Pakistan, North America, and Europe as well. Okay. Now this is all about formation of the World Federation. You see, there are communities that you don't know who used to live in the United Province in India. They withered away because they were not organized. They went to Fiji, they went to West Indies, they lost their culture, they lost their heritage, they lost their religion. We came to Africa, our standard rule was that 25 heads, one Jamaat. We would form a Jamaat. And in those days, we had many magazines to link us together. We had magazines like Rah-e-Najat. We had magazines like Salsabil Rahbar, Inkilab, Munadi. But really, the community realized that they needed a structure. So in 1932, in the Munadi magazine, some philosophers, some thinkers decided that we need some kind of a federation. And they wrote in this magazine. It wasn't taken seriously for at least 10 years or so. After 10 years or so, these Jamaats, because there were almost 70 of them, decided to meet in Dar es Salaam. They took this work of this man, written by Sachuddin, I believe, took it seriously, and they decided to form an ad hoc committee to look into this and maybe make up a constitution or so. The year later, they adopted the constitution, and the Federation of Central Body of East Africa was formed. And if you look at your parents' birth certificates, you will see, if they're from Africa, you will see Jamaat, Kampala say, and then underneath it you will see also countersigned Central Body of East Africa. In 1975, before that, in 1961, the name was changed to Africa Federation because Jamaats in other parts of Africa also joined. Jamaats from Somalia, Zaire, Mauritius, Madagascar, Mozambique joined in 1961. They had a meeting, and that name was changed to Africa Federation. In 1975, there was a meeting in Hammersmith. That's why you've got this Hammersmith Bridge. There was a meeting in Hammersmith to discuss forming a world federation of all the Khoja communities. Similar process. They had an ad hoc committee. They told them to draft a constitution. A year later, the constitution with changes was adopted. In 1976, the World Federation of Khoja Shia Ethnational Community was born, with Mullah Sahib, one of the founding members and the first president of this World Federation. Slide number 13. Jinnah, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, most people perhaps don't know. He was the creator, the founder, and the Governor General, the first president of Pakistan. He was a Pakka Khoja Shia Ithna. He refused knighthood. He was offered knighthood by the British. He refused. And when he became the Governor General, he refused to take a salary. He was born on Christmas Day, 1876, in Karachi, in Kharadar. And that day is a public national holiday. He was born, father was a rich merchant. He himself was a brilliant lawyer. They say that he was the most expensive lawyer in Bombay, and he had a successful law practice in Bombay. They say that he had a sixth sense, that he could see around corners. Friends and enemies admit that he was articulate, he was principled, he was highly, highly intelligent, he was well-mannered, extremely well-read, and he would cancel the meetings on the 10th of Muharram or the 21st of Ramadan. His marriage is logged in the Bombay Khoja Shia International Community It's logged there in Farsi. And his wife, Ratanbai Patit, is buried in the Khoja Shia Arambagh Cemetery in Bombay. Thank you. He believed that anyone who claims to be a Muslim is a Muslim. He refused to say that the Qadianis were not Muslims. Under intense pressure coming from others, he said, I will not. How can I make them non-Muslims when they themselves are saying they're Muslims? And he was once asked a loaded question. He was said, look, Qadi Azam, are you a Shia or a Sunni? And he said, look, if the Prophet is a Shia, I'm a Shia. If the Prophet is a Sunni, I'm a Sunni. But since the Prophet was not a Shia or a Sunni, neither am I. He was just a Muslim, simple Muslim, and so am I. Jinnah made a minority into a majority. Today, Pakistan has a population of 180 million. When he created Pakistan, the Khoja Shia Ethnic community couldn't have been more than 40, 50,000. From these people was the creation of Pakistan. If you read his speeches, it's very clear. He wanted an Islamic identity to this new country. He did not want an Islamic state. He wanted a multicultural, inclusive, diverse, just, tolerant, cohesive, coherent, pluralistic Pakistan. This slide number 14. Haji Muhammad Ali, Haji Ghulam Ali, Haji Ismail was born in Bombay. He was one of the early converts. In those days, our community, we did not go to Hosea Ilmiya. We were not very well read. We were mostly illiterate. But Haji Ghulam Ali, Haji Naji, lovingly called Haji Naji, was actually a scholar. He was taught by Mullah Qadir Hussain, Karbalai. He lived in very difficult times. He lived in dangerous times. In those days, to deviate from the mainstream could mean assassination, a lot of harassment and so on. He persevered. He wrote many books. He wrote the famous magazine Rah-e-Najat. He translated many du'as also. His work has been translated from Gujarati to Urdu. Usually, Urdu scholars write and he translates to Gujarati. But his work, because he was such a prominent scholar, his work has been translated from Gujarati to Urdu. His work gained many converts. His magazines were then taken by sailboats by those to Mombasa, to Zanzibar and so on, to reach people that he could not reach. And many, after reading the magazines, also converted. And the Khoja Shia Ethnic community is forever indebted to Haji Ghulam Ali, Haji Ismail. It is absolutely impossible to do justice to Mullah Asghar Ali MM Jafar in a few minutes. He was perhaps the most powerful, the most charismatic, the most greatest scholar that our community has ever produced. He had a real passion for learning. He is revered by a lot of the Shia community. He is revered by some of the Sunni sheikhs. He is highly respected by the Murja. He was highly respected by the Murjas as well. If you ever met him, you could never forget him. He will never forget you because he had a photographic memory. He would at times, because of his personality and power, he would dominate proceedings and he would challenge the community to change its ways. He was fluent in many languages. He was fluent in 7 languages. He has opened many masjids. Buildings and extensions are named after him. He was an institution unto himself. He has written many articles. He has translated many books. He used to recite countless majalises, usually spiced with humor. His classic first Saturday monthly lectures on the pillars of Islam are unparalleled. And yet after all this, he never went to university. He never got degrees and diplomas. He was self-taught. At a young age, he earned the accolade of mullah, who cared about the poor, who cared about the dispossessed. He was born in 1936 in Mombasa. He is the great-great-grandson of Devji Bhai Jamal. You see, Devji Bhai Jamal had a son called Sharif. Sharif had a son called Muhammad Jafar. Muhammad Jafar had the only daughter. He had sons, but he had the only daughter called Zahra. Zahra married Mullah MM Jafar, and Mullah Sahib was the first of the 10 children of this marriage. He was the president of Bustani Jamaat in Mombasa, after which he was the chairman of Bilal Mission. He was the Africa Federation chairman also, and he was the founder and the first president of the World Federation. He had very close relationships with the Murjas. In fact, because of these close relationships, he was put in prison and tortured by Saddam Hussein. He died year 2000. Somebody said that he lived for 63 years. He did 630 years of work. And the London Borough Council put a pavement around his grave as a mark of special respect. This is the last slide. This is our populations throughout the world of the Khoja Shia Ishnashi community. According to Hassan Jafar, the growth rate is reduced, and it is because we are having smaller families. So I don't know if there's a message in there, but our growth rate has reduced. You may want to just look at these figures. They may, you may be interested in these figures.